You've been reading people wrong your entire life, not because you're stupid, not because you're naive, because you were given a map that was wrong from the start, and nobody told you. You were taught that people show you who they are, that if someone calls you a friend, they mean it. That loyalty is built through honesty, through showing up, through giving, that the people who say the most care the most. And then the world happened. The friend who knew everything about you used it. The colleague who praised you in the meeting undermined you in the hallway. The person you gave your best years to disappeared the moment things got difficult, and you stood there afterwards trying to figure out where you went wrong. You weren't wrong. The map was wrong. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from this. It's not the tiredness of working hard. It's the tiredness of extending yourself again and again, and finding again and again that what you got back was not what you were promised. You start to wonder if it's you. You start to hold things a little tighter, trust a little less. Smile when you don't mean it, because it's easier than being real with someone who might not deserve it. That's where you are, isn't it? What if the problem was never the people you chose? What if the problem was what you were taught to look for in the first place? The wound? Here is the thing nobody says plainly. We were taught to read what people say about themselves. We were never taught to read what people do when their interests are threatened. There is a version of every relationship that exists in easy conditions, in warmth, in good times, in moments when nobody has to choose anything. And then there is the real relationship, the one that reveals itself when something is at stake. A promotion, a conflict, your failure, their opportunity. Most people live their entire lives inside that gap, between the performance and the reality, without knowing the gap exists. They keep being surprised. They keep calling it betrayal when, if they had been equipped to see it, it would never have been a surprise at all. I want to be careful here, because this is the part where some voices would tell you to become cold, to trust no one, to build walls so high that nothing can get in. That is not what this is. This is about something harder and more valuable than that. It is about finally being honest with yourself, about how the world of human motivation actually operates, so that you can stop being blindsided, so that you can stop waking up after another disappointment wondering what you missed. 500 years ago, a man named Niccolò Machiavelli sat in a small farmhouse outside Florence and wrote the most honest book about human nature that had ever been written. He was not a monster. He was a man who had watched the powerful fall over and over, and had noticed something that nobody else was willing to say out loud. It was never the enemies who brought them down. It was always the people they trusted. The performed relationship versus the real one. Every relationship you have exists on two levels at the same time. There is the relationship that lives in normal conditions. The warmth, the laughter, the quick reply to a message, the support when things are easy to support. This version is real, but it's only real in the same way that weather is real. It exists and then it changes, and the change tells you something true. And then there is the relationship that appears under pressure. Think about the last person who genuinely disappointed you. Not someone who let you down casually, but someone who you had extended real trust to and who failed to meet it when it mattered. Go back to that moment. What was at stake for them? Not for you, for them. Was it inconvenience, social standing, a shift in how they'd be perceived? Was it just discomfort? Here is what I want you to notice. The moment the relationship cost them something real, that is the moment the real relationship showed itself. And here is the hard part. It had always been that relationship. You just hadn't created the conditions to see it yet. The man who disappears when you need him was always going to disappear. The friend who uses your vulnerability against you was always the kind of person who would do that. You didn't make a mistake in trusting them. You were working with incomplete data. The data only arrives under pressure. There's a specific type of relationship even more dangerous than an obvious enemy. We'll get to it. But first, understand this. The relationship you have in easy times tells you almost nothing. Pressure is the only honest mirror. The four people in every room. Machiavelli spent his career watching power move. And what he noticed across courts, across wars, across centuries of recorded history, was that in any given room, you are always dealing with one of four types of people. There are those who genuinely want what's good for you. These people exist. They are rarer than you think, but they exist, and they are worth everything. There are those who want something from you. Not bad people necessarily, just people whose engagement with you runs through their own self-interest. When the interest is served, the engagement changes. There are those who haven't decided yet. They are watching to see what you become, what you're worth to them, what the relationship might offer. They haven't placed their bet. And then there are those who are working against you, openly or quietly, while appearing to be with you. The catastrophic mistake, the one that explains most of the betrayals you've experienced, is treating all four as if they are the first type. Think about the colleague who cheers your wins loudly in front of people, who posts the congratulations, who says all the right things, and who, in private conversations, in small moments, in the language they use when you're not there, subtly makes sure that the people who matter know exactly where your weaknesses are. That person is not a villain. They are a self-interested person doing what self-interested people do. Understanding that distinction changes everything. You stop taking it personally. You stop trying to figure out what you did wrong. You start reading it accurately. Stop for a moment. AB wants you to actually sit with what was just said, because most people hear this and assume it applies to someone else, to the person they know who's been really badly treated, to other people's relationships. Think about the last person who genuinely disappointed you. Which of those four types were they, honestly? Not the story you told yourself to make it easier, not the version where it came out of nowhere, the honest answer. You probably already knew. You just weren't willing to call it what it was. Because calling it what it is means sitting with a harder truth, that you saw something and you chose to look past it. That's not weakness. That's what humans do. But it's also what we're going to change. You don't get betrayed by your enemies. You get betrayed by the people you promoted to allies before they earned it. What people actually protect? Here is the thing that Machiavelli understood, and that Schopenhauer would articulate 3 centuries later, that almost nobody teaches. People do not primarily protect the relationships they say matter to them. They protect their comfort, their status, their self-image, their access to what they need in order to feel okay about themselves. When the relationship and those things come into conflict, and eventually they always do, the relationship loses. Schopenhauer observed that most social behavior is not driven by affection. It is driven by what he called the will to exist comfortably, the need to maintain a particular sense of self. And when that self is threatened by your growth, your failure, your need, your presence, the response is rarely conscious. It just happens. People move to protect themselves the way a hand moves away from heat. This is not about malice. Most of the people who have hurt you did not sit down and plan it. They followed their instincts toward their own comfort and away from their own discomfort. And you were in the path of that movement. The person who said, "I value our friendship," meant it in that moment. But the friendship was valued at a specific price, and the moment the price exceeded what they were willing to pay, the value dropped. Knowing this is not bitterness. It is the removal of a filter that was making everything blurry. Watch what someone protects when things get hard. Not what they say, not what they promise, what they actually move to shield when something real is on the line. Watch what people protect when they're under pressure, and you will never be confused about who they actually are. How to read a person correctly. Stop listening to what people tell you about themselves. This is harder than it sounds. We are wired to take self-report at face value. When someone says, "I'm the kind of person who," we file that. We build our picture of them from their own narration, and their narration is almost always flattering and almost always incomplete. Start watching 3 things instead. What do they do when no one is looking? Not what they perform publicly, what they do in the moments they think don't count. How they speak about people who aren't in the room. What they do with small amounts of power over people who can't push back. What do they do when something is genuinely at stake? Not when it's easy to be good, when it costs something, when standing by you would require them to risk something of their own. Watch that moment. It will tell you everything. And this one, pay attention to this one. What do they do to people who can no longer offer them anything? Watch how someone speaks about an ex, not just whether it's kind, but how quickly they reduce that person once the relationship stopped serving them. Watch how someone treats a colleague who got passed over for promotion. Watch how someone acts around the waiter when they've already decided whether they're coming back to this restaurant. That is the real person, not the version that's performing in front of you because you still have something they want or because they need a good reputation and you're part of the audience. The person they are when the stakes are gone is the person they will eventually be with you. And here is the type of person more dangerous than an enemy. An enemy you can see. You know where they stand. You factor them in. But the person who is loyal only in prosperity, who is warm in the good times and absent when you need them, that person you cannot factor in. Because they look exactly like an ally right up until the moment they're not. Machiavelli called them fair weather friends. And he said, with the bluntness that made people hate him and read him for 5 centuries, that they are worse than useless in the moments that define you. You learn almost nothing about a person when everything is going well. The real curriculum starts when things get difficult. What to do with what you see. This is where most content like this goes wrong. They've walked you through the hard truth. They've named the patterns and then they say, cut them off, trust no one. Build walls, become untouchable. That is not wisdom. That is trauma dressed up as strategy. Machiavelli was not advocating isolation. He was advocating accurate calibration, knowing what each person in your life actually is and relating to them accordingly. Not every relationship needs to be deep. Not every person needs to be trusted at every level. But cutting everyone off because some people are not what you needed them to be is not discernment. That's fear. The man who severs every imperfect relationship ends up alone and calls it strength. The man who calibrates his trust precisely, who knows which relationships can bear weight and which ones cannot, that man keeps his energy intact. He is not cold, he is clear. Think about the colleague who will never be a true ally, who is always going to protect their position before they protect yours. You don't burn that relationship. You don't pretend it's something it isn't. You work alongside them professionally. You give them the version of you that the relationship can handle. And you stop being disappointed when they behave exactly like who they always were. That disappointment, the one that comes when someone who was never capable of level 5 trust fails at level 5, that disappointment is not about them. That is about the expectations you brought to a relationship that couldn't carry them. Accurate calibration doesn't mean giving less to everyone. It means giving the right amount to the right people, and holding back the parts of yourself that would be wasted on someone who cannot receive them properly. You don't need fewer people in your life. You need accurate expectations of the people already in it. The one relationship you've been ignoring. There is a relationship that almost never gets examined in these conversations. Not the friend who disappeared. Not the colleague who used you. Not the person who took everything you offered and gave almost nothing back. Those are the ones we circle endlessly, analyzing, replaying, trying to understand. The one that never gets examined is the one you have with yourself. Are you honest with yourself about your own motivations? When you extend trust to someone who hasn't earned it, is it entirely because you can't read them? Or is it because you need something from the relationship? because the idea of it fills a gap. Are you performing the loyalty to your own values that you demand from other people? Or are there places where you are still telling yourself a convenient story? Because here is what I've noticed, sitting with this for a long time. The people who keep attracting misaligned relationships, who keep finding themselves betrayed, used, undervalued, are not always just unlucky. Sometimes they are not yet fully aligned within themselves, and misalignment has a way of finding its mirror. Marcus Aurelius, emperor, soldier, philosopher, wrote in his private journal, for no audience but himself, never intending it to be published, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." He was not writing that for the people around him. He was writing it for himself, the most powerful man in the world, holding himself to a standard in private that he never needed to advertise publicly. He did not perform virtue. He built it, quietly, in the dark, in the pages of a journal that was only ever meant for one reader. That internal discipline, the discipline of being honest with yourself about who you are and what you're doing and why, is the foundation that everything else requires. You cannot read others clearly if you are still lying to yourself. You cannot calibrate your trust accurately if you're selecting for what you want to believe instead of what is true. The quality of every relationship you will ever have runs through this one thing. The quality of your relationships will never exceed the quality of your relationship with yourself. Who you become when you see clearly. I want to say something that I don't think gets said enough. This work is hard. Seeing people clearly is not the cool, detached power move that it can be made to sound like. It costs something, because sometimes, often, seeing someone clearly means seeing that a person you love, a person you have invested in, a person whose opinion has mattered to you for years, has been operating at a level far below what you needed from them. That is a grief. It deserves to be called that. There is a particular sadness in looking at a relationship you held on to and realizing that your version of it was always more than the reality. That you were in a relationship with the potential of the person, not the person themselves. That sadness is real. Don't skip it. But here is what is on the other side of it. Discernment. The ability to look at a person and understand, without bitterness, without cynicism, what they are capable of and what they are not. And then to choose accordingly. To build relationships that are actually real, not relationships that require you to misread in order to function. You are not becoming cold, you are becoming clear. There is a profound difference between the two. The cold person pushes everyone away because they are afraid of being hurt again. The clear person draws the right people closer because they can finally see who those people actually are. You are someone who chose to see when seeing cost you something. That is not a small thing. Most people never make that choice. They prefer the comfortable blur, the vague sense that things will work out, the willingness to not look too closely, because looking closely means having to act on what you find. You are still here, 20-something minutes into a conversation about the hardest parts of human nature. That is not nothing. That means you are building something, quietly, without announcement, the way the real things are always built. You have not been unlucky in people. You have been operating without the right map. Now you have one. Use it. If any of this landed somewhere real, if there was a moment in that script where you thought about a specific person, a specific situation, a specific version of yourself that you are moving away from, comment one word below. Clear. No explanation needed. No story. Just that word. I'll know what you mean. If this is the kind of thinking you want to keep doing, not comfort, not performance, just the truth about how things actually work, then the subscribe button is there. Not for me. Because you started something today and it would be a shame to walk away from it now. Next, we talk about the specific type of silence that makes people underestimate you, and why the position of being underestimated is the most strategically powerful place you can occupy. That one comes next.